What is going on, Colorado? Welcome. How are you doing? It is Friday morning. We made it finally, almost to the end of the week here. A few more hours, and then we can kick off, enjoy a weekend, a snowy weekend here in Colorado. I hope that you are doing well. I'm Aaron Johnson. I'm coming to you from Castle Rock, and I'm here to welcome you to Mile High Live, a new live streaming channel that I am launching today. Let me start off by asking you a question. When you're on social media, when you click away, do you have a positive feeling? Do you feel motivated? Or, like me, a lot of times, do you feel frustrated? Maybe about a story that you just read, a news story that you just read, or something you saw about what's going on in Washington or with our government here in Colorado. Or, maybe you've got a friend or a family member chirping at you online, which unfortunately seems to be so often the case these days. A lot of times, I'll wake up, I'll turn my phone on, check Facebook, and it's like, what am I going to be angry at today, Facebook? Oh my gosh, I can't believe, or unfortunately, like this morning, finding out, there's a tragedy in the news, another shooting, like we witnessed in Indianapolis, and that we've experienced here locally in our community. There's just so much negativity going on online. Well, that brings me to the point of this channel and why I'm launching it, and today's chat with my guest, Alan Fuller. Maybe there's a better way to go about social media. Maybe we can create something a little bit more positive, provide a positive experience and engagement online. Well, that's why I'm launching Mile High Live. I want to offer something new and different in social media. And I want to do that by highlighting people who are elevating our community here in Colorado and who are doing the hard work of helping other people within our towns and across the state. I want to find those people. I want to chat with them and see how they're doing, positive things to help others around them. It'll be a chat format. As I get going weekly, would be the basis that I'm hoping to cover this and bring people on. How does that sound? Does that sound like it would be something better than what you experience on Facebook or Twitter or heck, even LinkedIn these days? Seems to just be so political and growing increasingly negative. How does that sound? Does that sound like something you'd be interested in? If so, well, hit that subscribe button down below and stay tuned for more. And if you're not sold yet, well, like I get it. Keep watching, tune in, and listen to today's chat and other chats that I have coming here in the near future, and subscribe when you see what we've got going on. So that brings me to my guest today, Alan Fuller, who's from Lafayette, Colorado. Alan is somebody that I've known professionally and personally for several years, somebody who's been motivating for me, been an encouragement to me, and somebody I know who is a leader in our state. And the reason I want to talk with Alan is because he recently wrote a piece really dissecting the dynamics that are going on in social media and how it's become so increasingly negative. And maybe there's a better way to go about doing it. As he describes this analogy of social media being a desert, and maybe we can find ways to make an oasis in the desert. I thought that was a really clever way of going about describing this, and why I wanted to bring him on to talk. Now, I've known Alan, like I said, for many years. We worked on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. several years ago. And I got to know him then. And since then, he's lived in Colorado, come back with his family, and really shown himself to be a leader here in our state, doing communications. And he has a company called Flat Creek. It's a venture studio based near Boulder that leverages technology to advance freedom and opportunity. That sounds great. And I know he's doing great work with, small organizations within Colorado, across the country, helping them with their marketing, with their communications, and grassroots outreach. So With that, I'm going to bring Alan on and we'll chat. And as you have questions, probably watching this on the replay, great. Ask your questions down below and I'll get to them. And happy to respond to any questions that you all have or your feedback. All right, so with that, let me bring Alan Fuller on. Alan, how are you doing today, man?
Aaron, I'm good, man. Thanks so much
Good.
for having me on.
I appreciate it. It's good to catch up. We haven't seen each other in a while. Like so many people have been holed up in our homes due to COVID-19 and working from home.
Yeah,
Usually
yeah, this is about how we communicate these
yeah,
days.
pretty much. I seem to bump into you a few times a year. It seems like an event somewhere along the Front Range. It just has been a while since we've had a chance to talk. So, how are you been?
Good. We've been fortunate through all of this. I think feel like our family's gotten closer. We've certainly all had that crucible moment of spending a lot more time together.
Yeah.
But we're fortunate. My oldest turns 14 this weekend tomorrow. She's not even becoming a teenager anymore. She's full blown teenager, and yet somehow we're still pushing through it.
I
So
hear you.
how are you?
My oldest son's 14, and yeah, exactly, teenager. My daughter is 12 years old, so technically preteen, but still, you look at her and see, yeah, she's becoming a teenager, and it's great. But things are going by fast. So, well, that's good to hear. Um, well, I wanted to ask you about talk through with you about your blog that you wrote, uh, plant a tree in the desert, because I think that you're hitting on some points here about social media and the dynamics that we're seeing today in social media, and so that's why I want to bring you on. But if I can, before we dive into that, I understand you were in D.C., Washington D.C. Was it a week ago? And I wanted to see what your impression was of the city, because I've heard it's not a really great place to be right now with all the lockdowns that are going on, razor wire around the Capitol building. I want to know, like, what was your impression while you were there?
Yeah, I was there for work, and we were
Okay.
visiting with some clients, and it was it was bizarre because you and I both spent time in that city.
Yeah.
It's a big city. Traffic is usually one of the worst problems in DC, and there wasn't traffic. I went out one morning. We were staying right downtown, and went out of the hotel. We're right by the White House, and there's no traffic. A handful of cars. Uh, Restaurants are all closed. Shops are all closed. You see them boarded up from the riots still from last summer, and it's just, the White House. Uh, Way beyond where the fence used to be.
Mm-hmm.
There's now this extended perimeter with a heavy fence around it. And like you mentioned, the Capitol has a heavy fence around it. Apparently, the barbed wire on top of the fence around the Capitol has come down.
Oh.
But so it's,
Baby
but
steps, I
still,
guess.
the fence is there, I guess. So it was just,
Wow.
it was bizarre because, yeah, we're in Colorado where, we have certainly had our share of lockdowns. And certainly it's been frustrating the way the government's treated us, but nothing, nothing like that. And
Mm.
so I think, some of the stuff we see on the news, and it feels like it makes a little more sense seeing the city, and that's where a lot of the newsmakers live right now. That's the
Right.
environment they're working in, and it's just a very cold environment right now. And of course, everyone's separated. Everyone's on their own.
Yeah,
Um,
that's an interesting point with reporters. That's their life. That's what they experience. They probably think that that's the way it is in the rest of the country. They're projecting that across other parts of the country. And yeah, we've had our share of lockdowns here in Colorado, but we still get to get outdoors and have fun and enjoy a lot of our freedoms that they're not there. In DC, when we were working out there, yeah, it's still called the swamp and it's still filled with government, still filled with bureaucrats, but it was a vibrant city, a lot of fun, especially when you're young, you're in your 20s, right? Lot, great food, a lot of, good restaurants to go out and eat at, good entertainment, with the monuments and the mall. It's a beautiful city. It's just sad to hear that that's that's what the environment is there today. But I guess
Yeah,
not
and
not
Aaron,
surprised.
exactly to your point there, I think you and I both experienced this working on Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
It's the vast majority of legislators and staff and people who are around the Capitol are good public servants. They want the best for their country. They're working hard to try and help their district, their state. They really want to advance. They're really trying to help. They're trying to serve. But there is that element that is there to make a name for themselves.
Hmm.
And just like somebody acting out in the class, they're going to give the rest of the group a bad reputation. Uh, so I feel like you and I have both seen politics change a lot
Yeah.
over the last few years. But to your point, a lot of people don't see how many people are still there who are actually in it for the right reasons. They are public servants. They are trying to help their constituents. But there is a different tone to it these days.
Yeah. That's too bad. Well, I think that's a great analogy as well for with social media and what we're seeing today. Like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn even used to be vibrant. You see people posting pictures. You started out right with food pictures, right, and going in at a fancy restaurant, or maybe you did some big barbecue and you're going to show your spread of food, and you go on a vacation, you're posting pictures of that, and it's much more engaging, exciting. And now it's just like vitriol, and people are throwing stuff at each other. And look, I'm guilty, I'll admit, of doing this on social media. I am no better than anybody else. In fact, I was probably an early adapter, to be quite honest, of this behavior. But I see is particularly since last fall, over the last year, like things have just gotten to be so bad, and my feeds are filled, good friends, but and family members, but it's just negative, and we're just chirping back and forth at each other. And I think you know what we're seeing in DC. It's just what we're seeing on social media. It's all part of the same environment and same, I guess, change in attitude for people. But I really like what you describe in your piece that you wrote. Plant a tree in the desert, about the environment, and maybe there's some hope, and we can change this.
Yeah, and I feel like, and that piece was just, that line actually just kept coming to mind
Mm,
for a long time. Who will plant a tree in the desert? And it the analogy being that a desert is lifeless. Like you said,
yeah.
it's difficult, it's challenging, it's not much fun. Nobody wants to hang out in the desert for a long period of time, unless you're going to Burning Man or something. But the idea that really got me thinking, okay, how do you reclaim a desert? Like, how do you bring life back to a desert? And come to find out, there are actually farmers doing this in real life
Mm,
all over the
hmm.
world in arid regions where they're planting, especially these acacia trees that uh, dig deep, deep roots, hundreds of feet go down, and they find the water table and they draw it up. And those trees are a foundation of aerating these arid landscapes and conditions. And so there is a perfect analogy there that if we plant something good with deep roots and ideas, it will flourish. And by it flourishing, it creates shade and draws in resources that more life can flourish. And we can really start to bring back to it. But it is intentional and it is organic. And I feel like that's one of the things that's really broken in our politics today, is this idea that government solves everything. I feel like most of our countries rejected that for a long, long time. That's why a lot of our ancestors came to America in the first place, was because they wanted to get away from an oppressive government. And so, if we can really embrace this idea that we, as friends and neighbors and part of the same community, that we're the ones responsible for improving politics. It's every one of us on social media. And exactly to your point, the cards are stacked against us, right?
Mm-hmm.
The algorithm is designed to promote posts that have more engagement. So if there's a post that has 100 comments on it, they're like, great, more people are reading
Yeah.
this, more people are seeing this, more people are going to stay on our site more longer, we're going to sell more ads. And so their business incentive is to draw up controversy, is to draw, if you post a picture of your kids and your parents like it because that's their grandkids, well, that's not terribly interesting to Facebook. But if there's a political discussion and hundreds of people are commenting, they're logging back on to comment again, and they're spending a lot of time on the site, that improves their metrics, and that's a good business decision for them, even
Right.
as it has a profoundly negative impact on our country. So that's where on our society. So that's where we really do have to be aware that the cards are stacked against us. We're fighting uphill. We are trying to repopulate a desert. We're trying to reclaim some sense of humanity, of community, of neighborliness. Aaron, we know from our time in DC that a lot of members of Congress, most members of Congress, don't actually live in DC. They
Right.
live back home in their district, and they fly in Tuesday through Thursday. And that's in large part because they want constituents to know that they're accountable to the constituents, that they're home in the district a lot. But there is a downside to it, and this may be a little controversial, but
Mm-hmm.
members don't know each other at all. So when they go to the floor to attack each other, or they step in front of the TV cameras to attack each other, they're attacking someone who's just as foreign to them as anybody else, any other stranger on the street. So somehow we have lost that humanity, not only that connectedness between us individually, but our leaders have as well. Remember, when a new member of Congress shows up, they go through orientation.
Right.
There's a Republican orientation, there's a Democratic orientation. When they get into town on Tuesday, there's a Republican meeting and there's a Democrat meeting. Like, they are, from the moment they arrive in Washington, they're part of that red team, blue team, and that's their team, and that's it.
Yep.
And
Well,
and so they
and
just have those connections.
they're strangers, and they when they run into each other in the hallways. What I've been hearing, some anecdotal stories about lawmakers. They go into elevators, or they're in the hallways, and in DC, as at the Capitol, there's members only elevators, so you have to have the fancy congressional pin to be able to get in there, and it's only the lawmakers, and it's so they can get to and fro more quickly, and they don't have to deal with the public or staffers, and it makes sense logistically for them, but they're strangers, and they don't even know each other when they step into the elevator. And one story I heard recently of a lawmaker, stepping into the elevator with one other lawmaker, was Republican and a Democrat. It was just the two of them in there, and one says, "Good morning, how are you doing?" Just trying to engage in just polite conversation, just like you do with anybody, and the other lawmaker just stone face, didn't react, flinch at all, because they knew that other person was from the other party, and how you can't even give the courtesy now these days, apparently, of acknowledging somebody from the other party, which in Capitol Hill, it's a place where you do battle over ideas, right? And it's always been that way. It's never, I think we sometimes have this idealistic view of the way that our government should work, that we're going to get along peacefully. No, government by nature is like, there's a lot of friction in there, right? But what makes Capitol Hill so special is most of the time throughout our history, we've been able to work through that friction. And sometimes it takes decades to do over very controversial issues, as we've seen, but eventually we get there. And now it feels like we're backsliding, and we're not getting there, where members can't even talk to each other. I think it's a really sad state of affairs, that our lawmakers are that way. So
Absolutely. And that again was a lot of what was behind the energy of this blog post, and behind the purpose of this blog post was,
mhm.
a lot of our research has shown us that the disagreements we have politically aren't actually over policy. They're over the style and the presentation
Hmm.
of ideas.
Hmm.
And they're really two different axes. The actual substance of a policy and the presentation of the idea. And you could look at them, they're almost completely separate. And so when we can't separate those two, then yeah, we lose the humanity of our politics. We lose our ability to engage in conversation. For most of American history, we had a shared vision that America was a place of freedom and opportunity, and all of our policies, all of our work should be about advancing freedom and opportunity. And we might disagree on how we got there, but we agreed on the goal. And today, I think you're exactly right. It feels like we don't agree on the basic reality, the basic premise of what America is and what our vision is and what we're driving towards as a country. If we can't agree on what equality looks like, for example,
Hmm. Yeah.
I think you and me, equality is equality. Like everyone is treated equally under the law. If someone's not being treated equally under the law, that is something that needs to be fixed. But now, you find that, well, it's not equality, it's equity. And that involves taking different groups of people, first of all, putting people into a group, which how do you even begin to parse that out? And then uh, assigning different rights based on what group you're in. That's a different objective than
Right.
what America's
It's a
always
different
been about.
conversation.
So
So,
yeah,
what can we do then in our online engagement when we're going on Facebook or Twitter, or I don't know, maybe you're on TikTok, Alan? Do you TikTok?
I
Do
don't
you
TikTok.
dance? No, me neither.
No cat videos here.
Well, and so what are ways that we can improve our conversations with each other then? It's not happening in Washington, right? And that's part of our discussion here. It's not happening in Washington. So it's got to happen at an individual level, at a community level. So what can we do? Are there certain habits that you think are positive things that people can use when they're online and not to engage in hand-to-hand combat with friends and family over policy or politics?
Yeah. This is a fascinating study that I was looking at earlier, that in February 2020, 90% of Americans said they were happy with their lives. They were satisfied with their life. They were living a good life. 90% of Americans, that's amazing. At the exact same time, only a third of Americans said they were satisfied with the direction of the country, and 67% were dissatisfied. So why is there this huge disconnect between my life is good, I feel good about my life, and uh, I'm not happy with the direction of the country? And it feels like the disconnect is in large part what we're talking about here. That social media drives this angst and this energy and this negativity about the world around us, even if our personal lives are really good. So there's a few things I think we can do. One, we can tune it out. Delete the app, put yourself on a social media diet. Living on Facebook, on Twitter all day, every day, it's just not healthy. Even in the age of COVID, finding ways to connect with people in real life versus online it's good for our mental health. It's good for our society. It's good all around. So just go ahead and delete the app. At a minimum, if you don't delete the app, turn off the push notifications.
Mm.
Push notifications drive so much negativity. There's so much of that snap reaction. Like you said, I've so many times fired off a tweet or a comment, and it's like, really should, could have taken a second to think about that. And it's interesting, some of the technology companies I've seen that they've experimented with a
Mm.
pause before a message is sent. And so some of the platforms have that where you hit submit on that comment, and then it's like, are you sure? And it gives about 5-second timer before it actually submits it. So
Is that,
I,
are
you
you sure, comma, dummy? Is
know,
that...
yeah. So it's funny, we haven't seen that rolled out on Facebook.
Right.
So or Twitter. But so I know a lot of social media companies are aware of it. It's just, again, it's direct conflict with their business interest to put a throttle on that engagement,
Yeah.
that conversation. So we'll see how that takes shape. But we personally, while we wait on them to take responsibility for their own platforms and their own technology, we can disable the push notifications. We don't necessarily need to know it. If you can, delete the app, um, and taking time to reconnect with people in the real world. The other thing is, I've heard some people do this successfully, is to read it out loud. Read the comment, the post, read it out loud, and imagine that you're saying that exact same thing to that person in real life. And would you actually say that in real life if they were sitting across the table from you in a coffee shop?
Right, because if they're just an avatar and they're not a real person on the other side, it's a lot easier to say that, right? To snipe at somebody. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. We have in a lot of ways normalized this conversation, normalized this way of communicating online, this abrasive way of communicating. And so it's going to be up to us, again, individually, to denormalize it. So that's a big ask, because the deck is stacked against us.
Well, like I said, I'm just as guilty of doing all this. I'm probably an early adapter of this behavior, but I've throttled back in the last several months, even how much I post online, and just trying to rethink, what can I do, in not saying these things and take a different tact. I guess I've given a lot more consideration. I guess habit that I've formed is I'll start writing the message. Just it's cathartic, get it out. It's like bottled up inside. Put it down on the screen, and then just delete it before you hit publish. It doesn't always work. Sometimes it's still too tempting to hit publish or post, but most of the time it works. It helps. So yeah, it's just like you feel like you got to say it to somebody. So just say it to yourself, type it out on the screen, or maybe only post it to yourself and then go back a little later and just delete. How about that?
That's a great idea. I don't know if you remember the TV show The Office. There was a character who had a blog, and he was talking about his blog, and he posted on his blog. And come to find out, at the end of the episode, Ryan, one of the other characters, had just set up a Word document and told him it was a blog. And he said, those things don't need to be out on the internet. And so this guy the whole time had just been posting to work. So to your point, exactly, maybe we open the Notes app and we fire it off completely, away from the red button to fire it off.
Yeah. Now you have a kind of personal policy of staying away from most things political on your feed. Is that right? Are you pretty disciplined about that?
Yeah, I do. Not on Twitter. Twitter,
Okay.
Twitter is Armageddon. It's Mad Max.
Hot takes by Alan on Twitter. Is that it?
It's not much fun. But yeah, Facebook's my family feed. That's friends and family. And so I really do try to honor that. If I post something political, it's something I'm very passionate about, and believe strongly in. But I try to do it in a respectful way. We all have friends. Hopefully we have friends. I have one really good friend in California who's very, very liberal, very progressive. I love the guy, and he is always calling me out on something when I post it. And so, it's prompted some really good conversations, because he and I have found that we do agree on the idea. We do agree on the outcome. We have different ideas about how to get there. And so that's been a lot of fun, actually, engaging in some of these conversations. But when I try to post, I try to think about that person. It's like, not just how can I get this off my chest, but how can I be persuasive? Because if it's an idea that I care about so deeply that I'm willing to post it online, I want to stop and ask that question: how can I actually be persuasive? And it may be that someone's attacking you. You're in the middle of one of these Facebook brawls in the comment feed, but keep in mind that the 100 times more people are going to read it than who are actually going to engage in the conversation. And a lot of times your audience, if you are trying to persuade on an idea and it's an idea important to you, it's to your benefit to tone it down a notch and think about the 100 people who aren't in the conversation, but they're going to scroll through and read it, and they're going to form an opinion about that idea about you based on what they're reading. So there's a lot of good reasons to take a pause, or maybe not even post it in the first place.
That's a good point. Okay. All right. So I've been taking some notes while we've been talking here. So the I've got 6 tips here. Uh, and as you talk about planting a tree in the desert and identifying problems with negativity in social media, how can we plant trees and create that oasis? So first of all, delete the app. Just resist the temptation altogether. I know I've tried that. Particularly with Facebook, Twitter. I've just never been a big fan of Twitter for some reason. It doesn't jive with me. I don't connect on there very well, but with Facebook I do more so. But yeah, there's been times where I'll delete it and then I'll come back. Then maybe a month later or whatever, delete it. Kind of a love-hate relationship with Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay, so delete the app. Turn off push notifications, and that's a really good one, and that's an easy thing to do. That way, you're not looking at the little countdown or count up point where it's like how many messages do I have, likes or notifications or whatever, and really like Facebook, they were really smart when they gamified social media with those things, and it's like a slot machine really, the way they designed it. It's like you look at it and you're like, how big is it today? Did I win to the jackpot? Did I get triple cherries? Right? I got 6 comments. So I won big. Take time to reconnect offline. Call people, get together with them. I guess we're going to be able to start to do that again here in 2021, right? Let's get together. Let's have a beer. Let's have a drink. Go for a hike, whatever, and reconnect. Number 4, read it aloud before you post it, and think, is that something that you would say to their face, not just to an avatar. That if you were sitting down and you were having a beer with them or coffee, that's something that you would feel comfortable saying directly to them without being a total jerk. And then creating silos. I think, to your point around using Facebook and Twitter in different ways. Okay. Where you say on Twitter, that's your outlet for talking about politics, and Facebook is your outlet for family stuff. So when your parents want to see what's going on with the Fuller family, then they go to your Facebook posts, and they don't have to be inundated with your thoughts on politics. Maybe around Thanksgiving dinner, right? Of course, that's inevitable, but that's good. But then, in number 6, talking about your friend, what that brings to mind, your friend who has different views, who's on the other side of the political spectrum from you, sounds like somebody who can help keep you accountable, right? Find people who you can engage with and keep you accountable, and have those discussions with them. Does that sound about right? Does that sound fair?
Absolutely right. And I love the way you've used the word avatar, because it's so true. That's
Yeah.
how we often look at other people online, as not a real person. And the more we can seek out people who have different views and just say, I don't know that we're going to agree, but I really want to understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And when we have that deeper conversation, when we stop and listen, I mean, that's a lost art in our society, right? Of listening,
Yeah.
grace,
What? I'm sorry.
humility,
Hold on.
listening. Yeah, these are things we don't do anymore. So when we stop and listen and we understand where they're coming from, we can often find, okay, we have the same objectives. Like, we really want our kids to grow up in a safe neighborhood, to have good schools, to have good opportunities. We want to be able to enjoy our weekends. We want to be able to enjoy, we want to be able to pursue the American dream, right? Like, that's the idea. That's what's so exciting about this nation. And okay, we all agree on that, but we might disagree on how we go about that. And so I think if we can get clear with someone on their motivations, they can get clear on our motivations. That helps us get more clear with our own. Like, am I just mad? Or do I really care about advancing these ideas? And a lot of times when we do that, that we'll create our own filter, right? We'll create
Mhm.
our own kind of tone it down because yeah, now we're thinking about somebody in particular that we really do care about them. We may disagree on policy or whatever, but we care about them as an individual, and we want them to understand more of these ideas that we're fighting for.
And that's great. Thank you. Okay, I've taken up quite a bit of time here, and I've got a few more questions for you. A little bit different topic, but is there anything more you want to share here? Your thoughts around kind of moving forward with our experiences online and social media. Any other concluding thoughts?
And Aaron, I'm just so excited you've launched this channel, that
Thanks.
you're having these conversations. I'm excited to get to join you on it. So no, I really think we've covered it well, and just it's up to all of us. The Facebook's not going to fix itself. Companies respond to consumer demand. So if we start to change our behavior, maybe then they'll
Mm-hmm.
follow. But it's really going to be up to us.
And maybe our elected officials will start to follow as well. That would be
Maybe
wonderful.
so.
Okay, so stepping back a little bit, changing topics. Uh, because I'm launching this channel, I want to focus on what's great about Colorado and really the people in Colorado that help make this state great. Okay, uh, we love Colorado because it's a state where we can get outdoors. The weather's great. The scenery is beautiful. Get up in the mountains. I mean, you live close to the base of the mountains in around Boulder County, which has some tremendous hiking trails and stuff like that. But I guess I want to step back and ask you a little bit about what is it that, Alan, you love about Colorado, and what brought you to the state here? What do you see as it makes this a positive place for us to live?
And I do love Colorado. In fact, I think we're both sporting matching Colorado mugs today.
That's right.
So
Yeah, that's right.
cheers, cheers to the great state of Colorado. Oh, but you know, it is the soul of the West. I think that is so exciting. I guess more practically, it's the weather. I grew up in the South, grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, where it's just humid and sticky, 24/7, 365. And to come out here and there's fresh air and sunshine. It's that alone is great. But the people aspect of it is that entrepreneurial spirit, that idea that you and I may disagree, but that's okay because we're all out here for the same reason. We all want to do our own thing, and that kind of laid back approach that we don't need to get into it. We don't need to fight. We can disagree. We don't need a program for everything. We're going to help each other. Um, I'm not a native Coloradan. My wife is, and her family, has this history in agriculture, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, when you grew up in on a farm, you grew up in a farming community, everyone helped everyone, and that's just a part of the nature of it. I think Colorado, that's one of the fun things to me is you can meet people from all over. When we first moved here, I sat down with a couple of people just I'd met online, and we got together for coffee. And I remember this gentleman saying when he moved here, people were just so kind to him and open
Mm-hmm.
to him and helpful, and he was just paying it back, and kind of did the same thing for me. And that's a lot of what Colorado is individuals saying, hey, I'm gonna help out my neighbor, I'm gonna help out somebody new, I'm gonna be kind and welcoming. I wish people behaved a little more like that on I-25, but uh, we're I feel like we are very generally just a good, welcoming, kind state.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I part of it, I always thought growing up, because I'm a native from Colorado. I've lived on the Front Range from Colorado Springs to Fort Collins and everywhere in between. And kind of that frontier attitude, though, right? I mean, being an old Western state, and we may not feel that now in our state, but I think several years ago, that was when I was a kid, anyways. There was that ethic, and it's like I'll cut my own life out for myself. I'll make my way, and it might not be easy, but I'm gonna make my own path, and not let somebody else make the path for me. I think that's part of what has made the state so great. Uh, so yeah, and people trying to pay it forward. And we've seen so many people who've come in from out of state, and the street that I live on in my cul-de-sac, I'm the only one that grew up here. Everybody is from
Wow.
Arizona or New Mexico, California. My wife's originally from Delaware, and I met her when I was out in the Beltway area and had no idea. I didn't even know where Delaware was. Let's be honest. Like, I was like, oh, that's by New York, right? Like, so close. But I remember my father-in-law, who grew up in Pennsylvania and Delaware area, used to talk about, this ethic in life west of the Mississippi, and he's just like I don't get it. Like, it's just different. There's something about it, So, but I think that's kind of the Colorado way, right? So,
Yeah, and I hope people as they move here like I did really do embrace that kind of laissez-faire approach here in Colorado, where we're here to do kind of a lot of people are here to do our own thing.
yeah. If you want to be
Um,
weird, cool, go be weird. But
Absolutely,
yeah,
um, yeah. So
good. Okay. This is great. Well, thank you for taking some time to join me. Where can people find you online? Your company here, right?
yeah, just I'm at alanfuller.com. That's kind of my personal website, and I've got links to a lot of the projects I'm working on there, and just some general ideas and occasional tech stuff that dive into. But yeah, alanfuller.com, and then I'm Alan Fuller at most of the social media networks. If somebody want to connect, I'd love to connect, and
Great.
feel free to give me a shout.
Awesome. Alan, thank you so much for joining me here for a little bit, sharing your views with me. I look forward to catching up with you actually in person, maybe this year. Wouldn't that be nice?
I'm really looking forward to that, and congrats on the new channel. This is
Thank
an awesome project.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to stay on here for a couple more moments and wrap up, and I will see you here a little later.
All
All
right,
right.
have a great weekend.
See you. You too. All right. Friends, thank you for taking a few minutes to join me. Thank you to Alan Fuller from Flat Creek, who lives in Lafayette, for joining me and talking as my first guest here for Mile High Live. And I think this is really good conversation to have, good table setting for what I'm looking to do. It's just far as provide something positive on social media. Like, I